Okay guys, so today I'm going to do a quick somewhat of an intro to multiple representations of exponential functions to have you guys ready for 7.1.2. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to kind of show you guys how to go from a table, find the common ratio, and then find the initial value. Once you have those two values, I will then go ahead and go over how you can write an equation that represents, the table. So in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and use the function that I used in the previous YouTube video. So I had f of x equals 2 times 3 to the power of x. I have the table that we created in that YouTube video. And then I already kind of did the work just because I'm going to already use our previous knowledge to hopefully make this make a little more sense. So let's say that we wanted to go ahead and find this common ratio, which we already know is 3. The way that this relates to the function values is basically what I was explaining in that YouTube video. Your f of 0, which is 2, to find f of 1, you would basically get that value and multiply by an extra 3. And what this means basically is you're always multiplying by an extra 3 because you're raising your power. So 3 to the 0 power was 1. And then when you raise it to 3 to the first power, obviously you're multiplying now by 3. But once you get to 3 to the power of 2, you're multiplying now by an extra 3. So you had 2 to the power of 3, or 2 times 3 from f of 1. And now we're multiplying by an extra 3, which I will go ahead and I guess use red for that. And same thing when it was just f of 0. You had f of 0, which was 2. And then we multiplied by an extra 3. And you can see that here as well with f of 3. So I'll go ahead and say f of 2 is 2 times 3 times 3, which ended up equaling 18. But you can see that here. And then we're multiplying by this extra 3. So obviously, I hope it's making more sense that when we have to then go backwards, so when we're increasing our power, f of 1, f of 2, f of 3, we're increasing our power, I should say, and then we're always multiplying by this extra 3. So when we go backwards, it would make sense that then we would do the opposite, which is to divide. So let's act like we did not know these values. You already have an idea, because we already did this, that our common ratio is 3. I'm just going to explain how you would get that 3. And I'm going to go ahead and use the values of f of 3 and f of 2. So f of 3, I'm going to rewrite it. F of 3 can be seen as the f of 2, 2 times 3 from above, times an extra 3. Now, f of 2 is simply a variable. So imagine that instead of using function notation, I would have used y. Then the way that I would have written this is y times 3, which obviously you always put the coefficient in front of the variable. So what I'm going to do is I am simply going to do the commutative property and switch the 3 and the f of 2, just so it makes a little bit more sense. And again, remember that I am using kind of our previous knowledge that we already know that the common ratio is 3. But I'm going to go ahead and do some algebra real quick. And to get the common ratio, which is we know is 3, is f of 2. We got to divide both sides by f of 2. What you do to one side, you do to the other. So one way to think about this is, and I'm going to go ahead and use my input of x. If you have your input of x, then you're dividing the next one. So you would add a 1. So divided by the f of x. So let's say, for example, 2. If I were finding f of 2, then I would plug in 2 for x, and then obviously 2 plus 1 is 3, and then divide by f of 2, which we see here. So this is kind of like the algebra 1 behind it. You're always dividing the next f of whatever divided by that f of let's say 2, for example. So f3 divided by f of 2. And as we see here, on this side, f of 2 divided by f of 2, they go ahead and cancel out. So I will go ahead and then just kind of erase those. And now we see that f of 3 divided by f of 2 will give us the common ratio, which is 3. And when we actually plug in the values, so f of 3 is 54, so I'm going to go ahead and erase that and then just plug in the 54. And then f of 2 is 18. So 54 divided by 18 most definitely gives us the 3. So basically, I was just trying to explain that to find the common ratio, you're going to have to divide the, let's say, y's, for example. So 54 divided by 18, we're kind of going backwards. So now, since I know that it's supposed to equal 3, so I'll go ahead and put this on the side. I know that the common ratio needs to be 3 based on the two values that I use. Remember that we already know what this is going to look like, but I'm going to go ahead and just erase it. I use that at the purpose of explaining that you're always multiplying by an extra 3. So now to go backwards, we would have to divide, which ends up giving us that 3. So now I need to find this value. And I already know that I'm going to divide f of 2 divided by f of 1 to try and figure out what that number needs to be so that it equals 3. So f of 2 divided by f of 1 should also equal 3 based on the two values that were already given. So I know f of 2 is 18. So I'm going to plug in 18 for f of 2. I do have a stylus pen. It's just really hard to use. So I'm using my finger to write on the touch screen. So bear with me. And once again, instead of using function notation, let's say we would have used y. Now I'm going to go ahead and change f of 1 to y. I don't want to use any other variable like x because obviously we already have an x there. So I'm going to say that, imagine that we're trying to figure out this variable here, this number that needs to go there. So I'm going to use the variable y. These are pretty simple numbers to figure out, like 18 divided by what has to equal 3, which we can use using our number sense, but then there's numbers that it's not going to be so easy to figure out. So I'm going to go ahead and take it back. First, I'm going to do the math, and then I'll take it back to 6th grade. Since we want to solve for y and the y is being divided, then I am going to go ahead and now multiply both sides by y. So the left side I'm going to multiply by y, and then the right side I'm going to multiply by y. And these basically cross cancel. And now I have 18 on the left side equals 3y. And since I knew my common ratio had to be 3, that's where this 3 came from. So whatever you find out your common ratio needs to be, you're going to have it equal to 3 and then times whatever number it is that we're looking for, which again, I'm using as y. So now to get the y by itself, I'm going to divide both sides by 3. And that gives me 18 divided by 3 is 6. Invisible 1, so just y. And now I could say that the number that needs to go in here, which again, I had switched the f of 1 just so that it made it simpler to kind of show the math, because imagine multiplying both sides by f of 1. It's the same thing because it represents a variable. We're looking for this value of f of 1. But basically now I know that f of 1 is 6 because I used y to represent f of 1. So now, same thing, same concept to find f of 0. I'm going to go ahead and erase the work here. And now I know that if I'm trying to find f of 0, I can use the f of 1 that I just figured out. And basically, since I'm using f of 0, imagine this like algebra 1 that I had kind of explained. I'm going to plug in 0 here. So that tells me that I'm going to divide f of 0 plus 1, which is just 1, f of 1 divided by f of 0. So to figure out f of 0, again, I'm going to use f of 1 divided by f of 0, and I know that my common ratio is 3. and f of 1 is 6. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that in here. And then divide it by f of 0, which again, I'm going to go ahead and just act like this was a y to make the work easier. So f of 1 was 6. I'm looking for f of 0, so I don't know what it is. I'm going to use the variable y. And again, these are numbers that are pretty simple to figure out. 6 divided by what equals 3? It's obviously 2. To kind of do the math this time, I'm going to use the butterfly method. So back in 6th grade, you could put a 1 under the 3, and then you could use that butterfly method. So now 6 times 1. I don't know how your 6th grade teachers explain it. I just imagine this swing. 6 times 1 is 6, and then your equal sign, and then y times 3 or 3 times y. I'm going to write it as 3y. And then obviously we're trying to figure out the value of f of 0, which again I'm using the variable y. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3, and then that's how we get the 2. And then 2 equals y. Why did I put y in there? And now you filled in the table basically, and the initial value is where your x is equal to 0. So now I know that my initial value based on the table is 2. My common ratio is 3. And if you guys remember from that previous YouTube video, I had explained what A and B represented. So that's actually going to help you with 7-21. The initial value is 2. So A is the initial value. B is the common ratio. I saw in some of your guys' summaries that you guys even wrote down that, this is our basic formula, A times B to the power of X. And now since I have those values, A is 2 and B is 3, you'll basically just plug them in to the equation. So A is 2, B is 3. Okay, I'm going to end up erasing that X and just rewriting this whole thing. So now I also have the equation. So 2 for my initial value times B, which is 3 to the power of X, would be my equation. So I hope that using this example, it kind of will help you do 7-20. I'll explain your assignment for today on the Google Classroom post.